Welcome to the Affirming Village podcast, where we center neurodivergent voices, affirm diverse ways of being, and empower families, educators, and advocates with knowledge that truly honors the whole learner. We're your co-hosts, Dr. Destiny Huff, a late diagnosed autistic ADHD mental health therapist and non-attorney special education advocate, and Lisa Baskin-Wright, an ADHD and dyslexic educator and IEP coach. Together, we dig into conversations about neuroaffirming practices, special education, and disability rights. Please remember, nothing shared on this podcast is medical or legal advice, and the views shared here by the host and the guest are their personal opinions. This space is for educational purposes only, to help you feel informed, empowered, and never alone in the village.
Welcome to our summer series. Oh my gosh. Today we are going to be talking about how summer isn't always a break. Rest, regulation, and redefining fun.
And I think that this is the place we have to start, because for some neurodivergent learners, summer does bring relief. It can mean a pause from school-based stress, academic demands, sensory overload, executive functioning barriers, behavior charts, social pressure, and constant transitions.
But for many families, summer also means the sudden loss of routine, predictability, services, structure, and trusted supports.
And when those supports disappear, what we see is not always quote unquote bad behavior, which, we don't use that term anyway. Sometimes what we are seeing is dysregulation.
Yeah, we might be seeing anxiety, regression, more meltdowns or shutdowns, changes in sleep, feeding, communication, toileting, screen use, or tolerance for transitions, limited capacity. And that does not mean that the family or the child is failing.
Right. It may mean that their nervous system is trying to adjust. We also want to talk about something that gets overlooked a lot during the summer, which is that rest is a support. Rest of any kind, and for sure disabled rest, is not laziness.
Recovery is not avoidance. Doing less is not automatically a lack of enrichment. Sometimes, after a long year of masking, compliance, sensory overload, academic pressure, and constant transitions and demands, neurodivergent children need time to recover, as do their families.
Mm-hmm. So do caregivers. Remember, guys, this is our script. Summer does not have to be packed with camps, worksheets, vacations, social activities, and constant productivity in order to be meaningful. And even when summer includes things that are supposed to be fun, we have to remember that fun can still be overwhelming for both the caregiver and the learner.
Absolutely. Family visits can be fun and can still be overstimulating. Cookouts can be joyful and can still be loud. Vacations can be exciting and can be unpredictable. Camps can offer connection and still require support.
A child can want to do something, kind of like during the school year, and still need breaks. A child can enjoy something and still be exhausted afterward, as can the caregiver. A special memory can still require sensory support, communication access, flexibility, and the thing we often forget about, recovery time. So in this episode, we are talking about how to reframe summer for neurodivergent families.
Not as a season where everyone has to, do more, be more social, stay academically ahead, whatever that means, or keep up with what other families are doing. But as a season where we can get curious about what our children actually need.
Which is rest, realistic expectations. We'll talk about caregiver burnout and how to redefine fun in a way that honors access instead of forcing neurotypical ideas of what summer should, quote unquote, look like. Because a neuroaffirming summer is not about doing summer the right way. It is about building a summer that your child can actually access.
Yes. And I will apologize that I did not read ahead to the script, and that's why I accidentally cut you off. Good times.
It happens. It happens. So, like we talked about before, we start every episode with a script to give you an idea of what the episode is about. And we thought going into summer that it was very important to start with this because we both of us still have learners that are still in school. So they're not even out yet as of us recording this episode, even though we are in almost in mid-June. But like my family, my actual kids are out. And so we do have a lot of schools that are out. And so we just wanted to talk about summer and just being realistic um, for your learner and yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, summer is kind of a mixed bag,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I know our personal experience, and this is true for a lot of the families I work with, you're just kind of crawling, holding your breath till you can get to the last day to have that reprieve. And I also work with a lot of families where, like, and this was even true for my family too, like more than one thing can be true at the same time, where
Mm-hmm.
that loss of structure, that loss of routine, that loss of connection with community, even if that's like ours as the adults, right? That drop off pickup time, right? If that's something you're doing, that can feel a bit stressful, right? The lack of routine and having to come up with that can be stressful. Childcare,
Mm-hmm.
right? Folks work and don't necessarily have flexibility, and accessing coverage and care during the summer is definitely something that a lot of families are having to navigate. And programs and support that are accessible are potentially really cost prohibitive and
Mm-hmm.
or really difficult to find.
Absolutely. I think, summer camps is definitely a thing that I think often comes up. And then there's
Yes.
always that accessibility piece that I feel like it's left behind. I feel like in 2026, I think we're more aware of the financial piece. I think everyone's kind of getting on board with like it can be expensive to have kids, right? Like it can be expensive to pay for certain things. So I
Right.
can see like there's this kind of communication conversation around like pricing. But then there's that accessibility piece that is an extra layer that parents of neurodivergent learners have to be mindful of. And so, an example I like to give is that when my husband was active duty, they went to a summer camp program on the base at the after school center. And so it's at the school age center. So basically, the same center they went to all year after school. You sign up during the summer and you can sign up for whatever weeks you want to choose, but you paid
Sure.
for that, of course. And so part of that was they knew if your child had an IEP, they knew if
Oh,
your child
sure. Of
was
course.
so they knew their disability, they knew their plan, what supports them, right? So it kind of guides more understanding, more accommodating, more comfortability with that access piece. Now that my husband's reserve and we're off the base, which means and we're in the civilian world and looking at camps, a lot of times family will like throw camp ideas out like, hey, they have this or that, or like the boys will love this or whatever, right? And it's like, but me and Nate, right, have to think about their ability to accommodate our children, right?
Right.
And that is outside of, everyone listening, they know that my children are not medically complex, right? And so that's outside of thinking about some of the families I support, what kind of access they would need to look at. And so I think that's one of the biggest things I hear about with a lot of families. It's just like the first thing I'll see in like all the parent groups and stuff, right? Is like, does anybody know of autism friendly camps? Does anyone know of camps that have ADHDers? And what you'll find too is a lot of camps will spring up because they'll see that need, right? But they're not truly accessible. And so you have like that push, or they are, and because they are truly accessible, they fill up so quickly.
Right.
And you also
That
can get
part.
your learner in there. So I think
Yeah.
that's like a piece that I hear a lot that can stress families out is that the camps start coming in quick, like we start, start seeing emails and things spring up and ads and all this. But like, is it truly accessible for my child? And then now how do I balance that out, whether I work or not, right? Because even if I don't work, like I still need a rest and reset time for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking about the town I live in where the kids were young. Um, it's warm here, right? So there's a lot of like outdoor camps. And there's this one camp in particular that's like, you know, everybody's staying up trying to get in line to get on, right? Like the computer system crashes to be able to get your kid into this camp kind of deal.
Mhm.
But it requires certain skill sets, being able to ride a bike, being able to swim, right? It's got an overnight. Like one of the nights is an overnight. And, like there's all these things that make it inaccessible for certain kids,
Mhm.
mine included,
Mhm.
right? Summer camps a lot of time have like a bike riding or a swimming component. And if your kid doesn't know how to do that, now we're talking about access, but in terms of swimming, we're talking about safety.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so then you're kind of limited to, okay, well, which of the camps don't require? What about transportation? How are we going to get the kid to and from? The hours of the camp, what can my kid tolerate? Right. Like, and in terms of like medical complexity, like heat can be a real issue for some of our learners in managing that, right? Like that sensory overwhelm and or just having a medical condition where heat is a real trigger. There are accessibility, and we could probably go down this rabbit hole for the entirety of
I know.
the
I was
episode, right? Like,
thinking.
it's these are the things we're not thinking about necessarily, or lots of folks aren't necessarily thinking about because the people that
Right.
are planning these camps don't necessarily have neurodivergent or disabled children. So they
Right.
haven't had to run through it. Food, right?
Mhm.
Like, um, and then there's just like I think where folks go kind of automatically, like you were saying, is sort of the financial side of things. Like there's a little bit more awareness and recognition around that. It's probably not as nuanced and well thought out as it needs to be, but that doesn't come across as like, oh gosh, I'd never considered, right? Like that as a
Right.
barrier. I
Mhm.
think that most folks recognize that camps are cost prohibitive. Um, but I think the next place people go when they think of accessibility is like, will they need an aid with them?
Mhm.
And then I
Mhm.
kind of feel like the conversation just sort of stops there
Mhm.
and doesn't necessarily consider all these other pieces um, that are elements of camp,
Right. Right.
right? And so, like, my daughter, when she was younger, just really didn't go to camp.
Mhm.
And I wasn't working at the time, I was tutoring at the time, but like I had a flexible schedule and the kids I was tutoring, or, weren't necessarily getting tutoring time with me during the summer. So I was home and she was in so much therapy that it was like, well, we're going to camp at the therapy center, right?
We're doing stuff anyway.
We're doing stuff anyway. Woohoo! Mommy's making another obstacle course that you don't want to go in. Um, but when we moved, we done this sort of bounce between my hometown, which is Oakland, and Davis, which is where we currently are. We all know where my preference lies, and it's not where we currently are. But when we moved to Oakland, the regional center like
Mhm.
provided some support, and one of those things was a camp. But it was basically like an ABA camp.
Mm.
Right? And so the regional center picked up the very costly tab, thank God. But my daughter lasted like crawled through a session and was like, deuces, I'm out. And then we had to recover from this camp that was
Right.
terrible and made her feel terrible.
Mhm.
Like, so now we're recovering from a school year and having to recover from this trash.
But I think you make such a great point though, because when we're talking about that, like the summer, and we're talking about like rest and recovery, like And I think this was my mindset. And so finding out I was autistic and ADHD, I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. When this school year was, hands down the best school year we've had. It would
Thank the Lord.
include both children. If I'm looking at both of them all together, best we had. So much so that me and Nate were like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? Like, are y'all not telling us things? But we knew they were because we have a
So
great
good.
relationship. But we were like, because we don't, I think all parents of learners with disabilities don't feel like no news is good news. And so whenever I hear that,
No.
like, no, that's not my thought process. But
No news is, what are you not telling me?
exactly. Like that's where we go to with that. And so, but what it was is that in the years prior, I think we were always in recovery. And so when they start springing up with summer camps and things like that, we're still trying to make it through the end of the school year. So my
Right.
mind is not, let me register this, let me register that. Even when I would say one thing that, and somebody's gonna be like, not true, but like the base that we were on at least, one thing they were really good at is like every time we go to swipe our kid out, there's a thing on there that's like, register for summer camp. Here's the paper for summer camp. Is your kid doing summer camp? Like they were like, it's
Doing
in your
summer
face
camp?
every single day. Like they'd be like, Mrs. Huff, we didn't get your paper. Are the boys coming for some? You know what I mean? So like, it was in my face. So I was able to go, okay, what week are they going to be there? What week are they going to be with grandparents? So we can count those out. And but besides that, we were always just trying to make it through to the end. So when you have these like pre-register and like it starts as soon as you get out of school, like type camps. So you have to register way before. We're so wrapped up in the school year, right? That we can't even. And so then once the school year's done, we're like, woo, high five. We all made it. We might have limped through, crawled through, rolled through, but we made it. And now it's like, okay, now we have to get ready for the summertime. And I think what you speak to when we talk about, that's why we say like summer isn't, excuse me, considered like great for everyone, right? Because now it might be a question of care. It might be a question of support. That was something that thankfully, because our kids were in military care, like we had, because had we not had them in that care, had we not both worked, then we would be struggling because we weren't near family.
Sure.
And so like this is the first time in my kids' lives that we've been near family. And
Right.
so I think that that's what, when we talk about that summer piece, that's what we're talking about too, is like that increased heaviness and demands of making like these decisions for the parents
Oh,
for
yeah.
their to access these things when you don't even have the bandwidth to like, did I pack you your correct lunch? Right? Like, and people don't think
Right.
that it gets to that, but it does. Like, I remember I switched my kids' lunches one time and put the wrong lunch in the wrong lunchbox. And thankfully, when the teacher saw it, my oldest was like, "This is my brother's food," and she goes, "Easy. Let's go see if your brother has your food." And so crisis averted. They went, brother had his food and was like, yeah, I was wondering why mommy gave me this. And they
Mommy
just,
is tired.
right. And they just switched it. But I'm like, you have to have that kind of support for their school team.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have just been a crisis, but I think that that's the piece too when we talk about that summer and rest and recovery and reset and like why summer's not always enjoyable is because sometimes your nervous system is so shot that you can't even prepare those quote unquote fun, great things, find accessible things. And then I feel like you're literally like usually like a month in, I personally feel. My kids have almost been out a month. And I feel
Right.
like finally feeling like some time to rest. And that's almost taken a month of them being out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I have two thoughts, and they're totally not like unrelated. The first one is my kid just finished her final exam. She's in university. She just finished yesterday. And like she was worried that I would want her to come home or like place a demand or something. And I was like, like, I don't care. if you literally put a toe on the floor out of the bed, right? Like, and she has an apartment, where she's local to me, but like has her own place and stuff. But like her plan for the next several days was just like no demand, catch up on the favorite shows or the YouTube or the whatever. I think there's a book she wants to read. Like, I'm sure there's music she wants to listen to. What I don't care. I don't care if she sleeps the whole time. And I told her she doesn't need to care, right? She doesn't need to worry about being productive or doing and there's no time limit on it. Like, it's not like, oh, you get to rest for a day or two and then like pull it together and tell me your schedule. It's like she's close enough that I was like, you could call or text and say, I'd like to be picked up. Great, I'll come get you. And if you happen to be home, you can literally come get me and be like, I'm ready to go to my apartment. I mean, like, that's literally all the level of planning that is required at all times. But that obviously applies for the entirety of the summer. That was one thought I had. The other thought I had, which was a little bit of a different train of thought, was for learners who qualify for ESY, right? Typically, well, technically, ESY is anything that happens outside of the standard school year, right?
Right.
But the way that it's typically conceptualized and implemented is that it's sort of like a quote unquote like summer program.
Right.
There's a lot of, I'm going to just say it, ableism wrapped up in how they qualify, how they talk about, right? Like the conversations about ESY this past spring near like push me over. Like, I just could barely tolerate it. It's like, could we have these conversations without degrading another human being? Let's try it for just for fun. Um, but they're partial day. And in some cases, they're partial week, right? So it's like Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to noon or whatever it may be, right? And so like it's they're often not at the site where the learner goes. It's often not with the staff that the learner has relationships with, right? So even if there's, I'm using air quotes like coverage, or you didn't necessarily have to register for camp per se for some of those times, like it doesn't mirror the school year kind of in any way. Right? Or very little. There's probably a little bit of mapping over depending on the situation, but in some situations, it's like completely different. The other thing is that the conversations around eligibility for ESY are happening throughout the spring. So even if you wanted to be prepared and sign up for some of the camps, you don't necessarily know if your learner is going to qualify for ESY, what it looks like, what the timing of it, right? Like, there's all these sort of what ifs and unknowns, which in and
And
of
you never
itself
know.
is so overwhelming that at least my brain just like turns off. Like, it's like I can't make a decision. I can't think about it because, as you were saying, we were trying to get to Friday afternoon. Like, let's just get to Friday afternoon so that we can collapse over the weekend and like try to pull it together to be able to get back on Monday. Like, that was our existence for many, many, many years. And I
100%.
wanted to get to summer, but like summer also stressed me out because I worried about isolation and I worried about, right, like all of those pieces. I worried about the pressure on me to like provide the structure and sort of the entertainment, for lack of a better word, right? Um, Without wanting it to ever feel like pressure or too much, right? And I had a kid where like going out on a million outings and all that kind of thing, like not her cup of tea, right? That wasn't respite, that was stress, right? So what did respite and connection kind of look like, right? For some kids, like somebody was speaking to this in community earlier today, looks like outings, right? It looks like going to places where, right, exploring their like their child loves like trains, and so it's going on train rides or to train museums or to, right, like exploring that kind of thing, right? There's Mercedes, Autism Out Loud. Her daughter loves like nature walks and exploring and going, right? So there's a lot of kind of doing that kind of thing. And, it's different from family to family to family to family. And so I guess I get lost in my own thought. Like it's tricky. But I think that ESY component is something important to name because it doesn't it doesn't really sort of fill the time gap that school does,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't necessarily like it comes with its own set of stress, honestly, potentially.
100%. I've had a family that was like, it adds stress, right? Because
Mhm.
they're like, it's a new environment, new staff. It's essentially almost like kind of like a modified day. It's a
Mhm.
truncated schedule.
Mhm.
Um, it's usually not at the same location. And then it's hoping that they're getting access to what they are supposed to get access to during that time, right? So there could be that anxiety of like, excuse me, how are they going to navigate it? Is it even worth it? Another layer I've had families mention is like, does it look bad if I say no? Like some
Oh,
families
sure.
do have their standard camps and programs that their child has been going to with their neighborhood peers since they were very small, and or there are things they've been going to where the person there knows the family and knows how to support their child, and they're like, or like we take the standard family trip, or they go visit this person or whatever. Now does it look bad that I'm telling the school, like, no, my kid's not going to do this thing that you're recommending, right? And one of the things I always tell my families is you just say, we're going to decline because we are working on those skills in other ways this summer. I'm like, I was like, it's not their business what you do. You can decline for any reason. But if you want to like, keep it kosher and you do have that fear, which a lot of families do about like the perception
Sure.
that's going to come back on them, then that's how you do that. But I think you really speak to another point too of just again, all of the mental, the cognitive load for
Yes.
families and their learners, and you know for a better for good, bad, or indifferent, we are in the struggling to be bored generation time frame.
That is a really fair
And
assessment of current times.
yeah, and so there's a struggle of like, because school has become like, I remember having downtime in school. I don't know if other people remember that, but I remember like you finish your assignment and it was basically like, don't disrupt my classroom. And then I don't care what you do. Like, you know what I mean? Like if y'all aren't fighting, cussing each other out, like, because we didn't have phones in our classroom. So like we didn't have to worry about, so every moment was not scheduled to the 12:32, we're doing this, 12:56, we're doing that, right? Like,
Right.
and so in turn, like we found ways to do. And I think one of the things I see with a lot of parents with their neurodivergent learners, something that can happen is that because they are used to that at school, right? So they are going, 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 going. They don't get a chance to rest. They don't get a chance to sit. I've noticed like the first little while, it might be a little like, if they're not really struggling with the change in routine, they might be like, oh, this is not like I can do what I want to do, right? Then kicks in the boredom because
Right.
I'm not used to not having things to do or not being told what to do. And then that's where I can see the parent stress kind of ramp up because, whoo, we're like breathing. We can all finally breathe, but then it's like, now I'm wanting you as my parent to find things for me to do. And so now again, we're back into that finding things to keep it productive, keep you moving, keep you not bored. Which again doesn't allow for rest, but also as the parent, I feel like we know our children pretty well. And so we already know when, okay, you want to do, right, but you didn't sleep well last night. So I know if we go do this thing, it's probably going to result in a lot of dysregulation because you didn't sleep well last night. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't have the capacity
Right.
to go do that. So I think that when we talk about that again, like that, so I think it's that cognitive load. And I think it just goes with how a lot of parents, I always like to say my quality parents always wheels are turning on like how do I help, how do I support, how do I do this, whether your child is a baby 2, 6, 18, 22, like you're always thinking of the way to support. And so you have to sometimes be forced into that rest and have to also help your child step into that rest. And so one of the things I've worked really hard with my kids on this summer, because my dad's retired. And so because of that, he has stuff planned. Like my mom's like, I want to take the kids here. And he's like, let's do it because they're grandparents. They want to rock and roll. My kids have become accustomed to that. That's been happening since they were babies. So they're like, are we doing something? Are we doing something, Oman Opa? But at the same time, I have certain things that I talk to my parents about to build in like rest and relaxation, to build in regulatory moments, to because it can be overwhelming and overstimulating, but they want to be a part of it. And so I try and help to kind of mitigate some of that. But again, that's that cognitive load too. And there's that balance you have to find.
Right. Oh my God, I had so many thoughts and they all are like bouncing around and competing with one another. How shocking.
I said so much.
Right, but it was also good, right? Like one of the things, this is out of order, is that boredom can cause dysregulation and then they need the co-regulation of the parent, right? So that like I think that's a like sort of a scenario that plays out. I
Mm-hmm.
think the piece you were speaking to of parents feeling a certain way about declining, right? Does this shine badly on me? Does it look like I'm negligent in some way or that I don't care or that, right? Is it going to come back to kind of bite me if there has been some slippage over the summer and they come back and it's like, well, if you did it, right? Like whatever sort of narrative the parent has told themselves kind of thing. And so I do feel like that's a pressure that parents can feel, especially as kids, like you're saying, if there is sort of this respite time and the kids kind of lean into it and the family's able to lean into it sort of the first little part of summer, and then all of a sudden it's like, what are we doing here? Right? That's when that pressure starts to kick in of like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing something, right? Whether that's I'm supposed to be working on reading with my child, or I'm supposed to be supporting their articulation goals, or I'm supposed to like fill in the blank, it doesn't even matter. I'm supposed to be providing them with these glorious experiences. I'm supposed to, right, monitor screen time. Um, so I feel like that's a piece of it that kind of ties into this idea of if I say no, am I almost going to be graded like on how I perform over the summer,
Mm-hmm.
creating access and meaningful opportunities. And the real truth is that ESY is to maintain,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they don't quote unquote teach new skills.
Right. Right.
Right. And so the pressure that we as the parents put on ourselves of like, we're supposed to keep the train moving in a forward direction, right? Like even the folks in ESY, that's not their framework.
Right. Right.
Right. But we don't necessarily give ourselves that grace. Um, yeah, it's really tricky. And there was something else you said that is left and is slowly kind of creeping back in. Um, just around like that cognitive load and kind of
Mm-hmm.
caregiver burnout and fatigue, which I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I am you and I both, but I'll just speak for myself and let you speak for yourself. Like it's not so much caregiver burnout for me at this point because my children are grown. And while my son has had a gap year and been at home this year, he's 23 years old. And while he is definitely his mother's son. Uh, he's, he's able to navigate his world without a tremendous amount of my support. Um, but the burnout just from this year has been intense. And reminiscent of when my kids were little, and right, like, and I think that one thing that um, can happen, it doesn't obviously happen for every family, but those that have had things with the IEP team reach kind of a boiling point, an unresolved boiling point, conversations are still happening over the summer.
Yeah.
Right? And even if those conversations aren't happening, and we'll get into this weeds of this in a later episode during the summer, because IEP stuff does still happen over the summer. And but I think that still being in communication and trying to figure that out feels like an interruption to respite.
Right.
And feeling like you as the parent have no access to the school team, and oh my gosh, we don't have things where they need to be. And how am I supposed to send my kid back with things really unsettled, especially if you feel like the team is not great with communication at baseline? Like, that makes it very hard to relax and recover and like take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think and I think that is such an important piece because again, us as advocates, we both have that currently going on where, I mean, and I'm seeing other advocates like that I'm friends with that are literally like, woo, just had my last IEP meeting for the year, and like, are my last learners last day of school is today, so like we're done.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, because I think, even I know with my families, like my kids, they go back to school in August, and they go back like first week of school, August.
Yeah.
So for all the families I support that are in that same boat, those first 2 weeks of August, they go back to school. We're meeting in July, because a lot of times we're already doing an IEP meeting as soon as we get back in school within those first 15 to 30 days, 30 to 45 days, right? So we got to plan that, email, do all that. So usually June is my really only respite as an advocate. And then this year, that has not happened. And so, and not
Oh,
just like
God.
a few days off here and there, you know what I mean? But like, as
Right.
you express, like, we're still putting out fires. And it's like, this is the first year I feel like where I'm putting out fires as an advocate. I'm not stressed, pressed as a parent.
Right.
Has been a nice change of pace. However, I do have a child in ESY.
Yeah.
I do have, my son will go to his last year of elementary school this upcoming year. So we're trying to look at, are we checking all the boxes for elementary to head to middle? My youngest is going from learning how to learn to using what he's learned. So we had to do an overhaul in his academic accommodations. Um, so it's all those things, right? Like, and so it's like,
Right.
my husband and I was talking about, for us, summer can be a reprieve because, one, we don't have to get up because we take our kids to school and pick them up. So for
Right.
one, we don't have to get up at that time. So that's a nice reprieve. On the other side, now that we're not on the base, we have that stress of like making sure they understand that being bored is okay, and that when you're relaxing, that's not being lazy. And I want to touch on that for a second, because I've said this to Lisa many times. Lisa and I talk every day. And I always talk about how, like, society teaches our kids things before we even have a conversation with them about it.
Right.
And I noticed that whenever it was like, oh, because my kids, which I know somebody's going to go, oh my God, I wish. And I was like, it's always like two sides of the same coin. my kids don't necessarily like to eat out. And the problem for that with me is that then that means that me or dad, like if I'm working, we're always cooking. And
Ugh.
so in the kitchen, cooking. And it's the same things. And then maybe we're not no longer eating those things, but we don't know what else we want to eat. So now me and dad, who are both, as I've expressed, we're both neurodivergent, openly about that. And we're open about that. And so I'm not sharing anything my husband wouldn't be comfortable with me sharing. And so that's a load for us to have to do that. So sometimes it's like we're just gonna order Little Caesars. You know what I mean? Just like because it's like then we don't have to think. But we have to go into that. And so I noticed like the other day I was like, okay, what do you guys want to eat? Because dad's gone, like for work. And so I'm not cooking because I had like stood in the kitchen like 2 days prior and I was in the kitchen for like 4 hours cooking for multiple days to get it out the way. And well, four is an exaggeration. It was like two. And
It's okay. It felt like 4. It felt
yeah,
like 6.
really like 8, like a full-time job. And so they were like, well, mommy, that's lazy. And I was like, oh,
Pick.
because I started to realize, like, even when we're laying around relaxing, my oldest would be like, oh, we're having a lazy day. And so, like, that term, though, has been tied,
Interesting.
right? Like, that term has been tied to, like, you're just not doing. Instead of, like, it's okay to rest, it's okay to relax. And I knew that's the sense in which he was using that term. And so I found myself letting them know, like, hey, guys, like, it's okay for us to rest, it's okay for us to relax. Like, no, after my husband's in IT, after, 8 to 10 hours on his computer, no, daddy may not want to go outside and throw the football, which he will still do. But he doesn't want to maybe go out there and do it for 2 hours. He's going to go out there and do it for 30 minutes, right? But I found myself having to explain that to them. And I feel like society doesn't help with that narrative, but also I feel like schools don't help with that narrative because as adults, because we have to go, we often don't have that empathy for children because we're like, well, I have to do it, I have to do it, or I had to do it. And I always think that's funny because I'm like, when I look back at schools when I was growing up, I did not have to do it. Yes, I had to be up early and I had to be there. I had to do my work. Yes. But I remember recess lunch and then talking to my kids and then being like, you had 30 minutes for recess? Like, you had 30 minutes for lunch? Because now their lunch is 30 minutes. But as my sister's an educator tells me, that 30 minutes includes getting your stuff, going down to the
Right.
cafeteria, sitting down, eating your food, cleaning up, going back. Like that 30 minutes is wrapped into all that. And we just had
Right.
30.
It's like gone like
Yeah.
this.
So it's like it doesn't even exist. And so my kids were like, basically we get like 15 minutes really. And so I think it's just important to note that, a thing I would recommend for families is like teaching your kids like boredom is okay, but also rest is okay. And it's gotten to the point where my kids will actually say sometimes like, hey mommy, I think you need to rest. Like I think you're tired. I think you need a break. And that's because we actually
Good.
talk about like that's okay. And sometimes, and that's even the language I've used just as a tip for my families that may have dysregulated learners at school. That's the same language I use when I feel like my learner needs to come home. When the school's not sending them home, they didn't even call me up there to mitigate anything. It was just letting you know, having a hard time. And I went up there to look myself, see what's going on, assess the situation. And I was like, nope, think we need to rest, think we're tired, overtired, let's come relax. And that has helped with that transition too.
Yeah. You said something earlier and then you've looped back to it, which is great. And I appreciate you for reading my mind without knowing that you were reading my mind. Is this idea of just being?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And when you loop in sort of society, I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure is to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we're not doing, we must be somehow failing. Whereas, like, we're allowed to just be, we're allowed to just exist.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to be quote unquote productive.
That heart.
Right. Like, and I philosophically, like, wholeheartedly believe this.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I have a hard time living it. Like I have a hard time. Um, well, I'm a pacer. I have a very hard time sitting. I am not a sitter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if I am overcooked or I am exhausted or I'm not feeling well and I need to just rest,
Mm-hmm.
like my brain will start to get itchy, like I gotta be moving. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not so much I feel like I have to be productive necessarily as it's really hard for me to just sit for huge periods of time, which should be terribly shocking for you.
But also, I think that loops us back in as we're coming towards the end of the episode of like the neurodivergence, right? And disability, because being ADHD, I guarantee you, as an ADHDer, as someone who is married to an ADHDer, is related to ADHDers, like that is exactly how it would sit. And my youngest, your best friend, has even expressed, because my youngest loves Lisa and he sends her voice notes. By the way.
And it's my literal favorite thing ever.
But he has said that. Like sometimes I'm like, dude, can you just chill? Like, can you just sit down? And
Right.
he's like,
Nope.
literally, mommy, I can't. Like, I feel like, you know what I mean?
Right. Aaron and I do this too. This is why James and I get along so well. Oh, I'm sorry. Your youngest.
Yes, it's so true. It's okay. He's out there. It's but
I'm
yeah,
like,
no, 100%. Like and I think that's the thing though, is that what we're referring to is like during the summer, like one of the things that we constantly talk about, and we've come across with our families a lot. A lot of our families find out they're neurodivergent after their learner. And so they may not even know they're neurodivergent. And we know this all the time. We have learners in the classrooms right now that they have no label that anyone is aware of, but that support still seems to be needed. And so I feel like that's the same when we're looking at it, is like that's what we mean about that rest and relaxation. It's not just like sitting down. It's like, and I say this as a mental health professional, one of the things we always talk about is like, is your mind resting too? And that's the part that I think where we can see like that
yeah,
motor constantly running, or we can see like just constantly thinking and thoughts and so I think again when we talk about summer and what it can look like, I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway that we want families to have and staff to have, because I know like my sister was like looking through pictures today of like her class and it was like, I miss my babies, but like I'm glad it's summer. Like she was like,
right,
I miss
right,
my
right. She's like,
babies, but
aren't they
I
cute?
need she's like,
I'll see him next year.
literally, she was like, they're so cute. Look at my raggities. Like she's like, but you know what I mean? Like she's like, but and then she's looking at her
Right.
nephews and she's like, but I needed summer break. Like I needed to be able to
Oh
in. I needed to, and so I think that we have to look at summer as, yes, an opportunity to rest and reset because you deserve that. Not because you did anything. You just everyone deserves to
yeah.
rest and
Right.
reset, but also it can be stressful.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
can't disregard that, and we have to consider others' experiences.
Yeah. No, my husband and I go through this because he's undiagnosed but suspected ADHD, and my pacing and movement drives him up a wall because it feels like anxious to him, right? It just feels like the knob is turned up and it ratchets him up. Like what do I need to fix something? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Like, are
my
you
way of
okay? Is everything
regulate, right?
okay?
Like, are you okay? Is everything okay? Like, can't you just sit? And I'm like, no. And it's been this way. I mean, we've been together for 29 years. Is that right? I'm like, yeah, we started dating in January of 1997. So yeah, almost 30 years. And it's been this way the whole time, undiagnosed, not aware of anything. Where, and it's, I mean, it's not like he doesn't move, but he moves with purpose, right? Like he'll go take a bike ride or he'll go for a run and he'll go swim. And he definitely doesn't sit well either, but it looks very different, right? Like he was raised in a family that like does projects. So he'll go in the garage and like tinker or build or fix or do, right? So it looks different, but when he's sort of done and in the house, he can just sit and relax. And when I'm in the house, like I'm moving. It's good times.
No, but I think that's such a great, that just gives that context. And I think, especially if you're in a house of neurodivergence, which my family absolutely is, we have an ADHD or an autistic and and then two ADHDers. So it's very much a different dynamic. There can be a lot of overstimulation, understimulation going on. And I think that's the other piece. So it's like you're having all of those. And my husband and I both work from home. One works from home downstairs, one upstairs. But so when summertime comes, yes, we're glad like we can get up at any time. The kids don't have to go to bed so stringently at a certain time. But we are also bringing all of our neurodivergence, not just, a few hours a day now. You're talking about predominantly all day. And
Right.
so I think that you brought that up, and that's gives such great context for like the considerations that again you have to make. And so I think that a big thing for our podcast is always wanting to reach people and wanting them to feel like, oh, somebody gets it and somebody understands. And I think that that's really what this episode has been
Right.
is to like be like, hey, you're not going through this alone, by the way. Like, we're all enduring this. And right now I'm like freeing it up because I'm home because my husband's away for training and the kids are with grandparents. But, I was just in a like push through, you can do it a few days ago. Like just
Right.
make it to this day. So I hope that you guys listening to this episode just kind of feel like, yeah, they get it, they see it, there's others going through it, and feel that sense of community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great and perfect place to wrap up this first episode of the summer.
Yes. So we'll have 5 more episodes this summer. This is our mini summer series. Definitely let us know if there's anything this summer that you want us to talk about, and we'll see if we can fit that in. And if not, we'll throw it in the fall.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for joining us here in the Affirming Village. We're your co-hosts, Dr. Destiny Huff and Lisa Baskin-Wright, and we hope today's conversation leaves you feeling seen, supported, and better equipped to advocate for yourself or your learner. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone else in the village. Until next time, keep advocating, keep affirming, and keep building the village we all deserve.